Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome to hour number 3. It's a football Friday, but frankly, it's even more than that. We continue to preview the Sunday slate around the National Football League. Our Week 7 Pick 6 comes up in our final half hour. Our best bets, our favorite picks for the entirety of the NFL weekend. Joe, quickly. To both of us, we got the teaser right for the first time in 6 weeks this year as we combine forces for that two-leg 6-point teaser. We hope to keep the good times rolling into week number 7. But week 8 of the college football season, sensational, if even possible, somehow, some way. With how great this year has been, maybe this weekend could be the best. Again, I don't even know if we can keep topping what we have seen. But Week 8 does at least have the recipe in store. And on this Friday, a doubleheader of Major League Baseball playoff action. The Dodgers one win away from a berth in the World Series and a National League pennant for the 4th time in the last 12 years. The Yankees looking to take a commanding 3-1 lead in Cleveland. Or will the Guardians walk off in late game magic, roll on into game number 4? Oh, yeah. 4th game of the WNBA Finals. The Liberty need one win in Minneapolis for their first ever WNBA title in franchise history. So much to get to here, Joe, in this third and final hour.
Yeah, no, it really is. And you got to love urgency, Ben, because it starts today with Major League Baseball, who delivered once again one of the instant classics, which is what makes anybody who says that baseball is boring. Watch postseason baseball. Tell me how boring that Yankee and Guardians game was last night.
Yeah, you better be watching postseason baseball. There is nothing like it. The atmosphere, the excitement in October. All right, we'll get to some playoff baseball right here, right now. Our preview of the doubleheader. But first, before we get our breakdown, we got to hear it from the public. Who wins Game 4 tonight in the ALCS? In Game 5 in the NLCS. Put them together for a moneyline parlay. That was the question to all of you, and fade the public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, who will win today's MLB postseason games? The Dodgers and the Yankees, the Dodgers and the Guardians, the two New York teams, Joe Ranieri, or maybe the Amazons and the Guards as well. At Fade the Public or at SportsGrid and the Fade the Public poll. I do want to say, yesterday we asked the public what was the best bet for Thursday Night Football in New Orleans. Most of the public back in the Broncos, laying 2.5. Cash, ding, ding. Public 6-6 this year. Who would have thought? And even 500 right down the middle. So, Joe, the results of today's poll, they're back in the favorites, the Dodgers and the Yankees for the double header today. If that is correct, LA will be in the World Series with a National League pennant to hold, and the Yankees will be just a single victory away from joining the Dodgers in what would be a monumental matchup in the Fall Classic. But we ask you first, Ranieri, are you fading the public?
I am fading the public here because I think actually both underdogs win the games here today. So I'll take the Mets, and I am absolutely going to take the Guardians here to tie this series up. I think we've got 7 games coming with Yankees Guardians here, Ben, and I think if the Dodgers are going to advance, they're going to have to do it in LA. I don't think it's going to happen here at Citi Field.
You know what, Joe? I want to believe, right? I just want more playoff baseball. I want to buy in. Jack Flaherty, though, was unreal in the opening game back at the Ravine against the Mets. He gets the start tonight. We've got a game starting at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We've got a doubleheader on this Friday. It will only be one game tomorrow in Major League Baseball. We might not see another doubleheader for the rest of this season for however long it goes here in the playoffs. So appreciate it. Now let's start to break down the games, Joe Ranieri. Game number 5 tonight of the NLCS in Queens at Citi Field. Again, Jack Flaherty, sensational in Game 1, gets the nod for Dave Roberts, trying to clinch a spot in the Fall Classic tonight. Minus 132, the price in favor of LA. David Peterson on the other side for New York. All hands on deck for Carlos Mendoza and the Mets. 7.5 is the total. Joe, we have seen 4 consecutive overs. All 4 games so far in the LCS, at least 8 total runs. You think the Mets save their season tonight? How does New York get it done?
Well, they got to get it done because they need David Peterson to handle the lefties in the lineup here. He is the only lefty available to the Mets, I believe, here in this day, and they need him to handle Ohtani. They need him to handle Freeman if he plays. They need him to handle Muncy. He needs him because he's their one opportunity here to give the Mets an opportunity to play from in front. They can't be dropping down and it's a 5-0 game heading into the 4th inning. I do think Peterson, who has been exceptional, much better, of course, against lefties than righties. I expect him to have success against Ohtani as well as Freeman if he plays, and Muncy. That, to me, is the biggest battle for the Mets. If he does it, gets through 5, the Mets have the lead. The Mets will have a very good shot at winning this game.
So, Joe, I think that's a really sound point, right? Yesterday, second pitch of the game, Shohei Ohtani takes Jose Quintana yard. The Mets did respond with Mark Vientos in the home half of the first, but from there, it was really all Dodgers. Mookie Betts, 2 RBI double, a 2-run home run. They added on from that point. Betts awake now in the NLCS. Shohei Ohtani back-to-back games with a long ball. Max Muncy is batting .500. Tommy Edman has an RBI in all 4 games in the LCS, batting .412, 7 for 17 at the dish, 7 ribbies in total. Kike Hernandez continues his prolific postseason. It is incumbent on David Peterson to slow down the offense for LA. The Mets have been blanked twice. They have scored 2 runs as they did last night. The Dodgers have at least scored 3 in every single game. They got 9 in Game 1, 3 in Game 2, 8 in Game 3, double digits, 10 last night in Game number 4. Welcome back to our guy, Joe Ranieri, here on the early line. Luis, don't you dare call him another name. Heel. He gets the start tonight in Cleveland, his playoff debut both this year and in his career for the Pinstripes. Taking on the Guardians, minus 118 on the money line. The Yanks, a short road favorite once again, as they were holding on to that favored number yesterday in Cleveland on FanDuel. 7.5 is the total. The Guardians, the late game heroics out of John Kenzie Noel and David Fry. Does it carry over after walking it off into game number 4?
Yeah, well, I think it does, and here's why. I think the Yankees are in a worse spot bullpen-wise than the Guardians are. The Yankees need Heel to they're going to need length from him. They're going to need at least 5 hopefully 6 innings, because the Yankees had to go through another 6 relievers yesterday, including Luke Weaver, Tim Hill, Clay Holmes. That was the second multi-inning game now for Weaver. Canale also recorded 5 outs. They don't have a lot of options outside of Marcus Stroman if he runs into trouble early for long relief. So I think this is up to heel, but I do think runs are coming from both lineups here. I love the over, but I do think the Guardians have the edge in the bullpen, and I'll lean with them at home to tie the series.
You would think the Guardians do have that edge, but what has happened to Emmanuel Clase if Stephen Vogt can even get the game to that point for Cleveland? Heel this year, great in his rookie campaign, 15-7 with a 3.50 ERA, but did allow 10 earned runs combined in his final 2 starts of the regular season to end out September. We'll talk about Game 4 in the WNBA Finals quickly on the other side before we preview the weekend in college football next on the Early Line.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We get you to college football and a sensational Week 8 slate in just a moment. But quickly here, Joe, before we do that, it is game number 4 of the WNBA Finals, a potential to clinch tonight in the Twin Cities for the New York Liberty. They're a 3-point favorite in game number 4. They have a 2-1 series courtesy of Sabrina Ionescu, the step-back 3-point game winner with just under 2 ticks remaining in game number 3 for the Liberty, who are now on the brink with just one more win of their first ever WNBA championship in franchise history. Does it happen tonight in game 4 in Minnesota?
Man, it just seems like a team of destiny here, this Liberty. I mean, Ionescu, the bomb for the walk-off win there was just absolutely impressive. But listen, we in Minnesota, I would not sleep on them. They were very much in that game, probably let the Liberty back into that game late a little more than they should have. I do think it goes 5 here, Ben. So I'm opting for all-important winner-take-all championship here. Plus, I'm holding a Lynx ticket for a championship at plus 450. So I really need this thing to get to Game 5. That's the way I'm looking.
Yeah, I get that. If you want to join Joe in holding that Lynx ticket to maybe find some value for Game 5, some middling opportunities, if there will be some. Minnesota right now, plus 640. It's minus 950 for New York to win the WNBA title. If there is a Game 5, it is back in Brooklyn. Breanna Stewart, by the way, she was great in Games 2 and 3. The hefty favorite at minus 370 to win finals MVP for the Liberty. Sabrina Ionescu has that second best price. All right, to college football we go. And boy, oh boy, what a Saturday we have in store. The first top 5 tilt in Austin, Texas since 2006. It's number 1 Texas. It's number 5 Georgia. It's now a 4.5-point spread in favor of the Longhorns, total at 56.5. Joe, this will be the first game for the Bulldogs from UGA as the underdog since the very start of the 2021 college football season. And from that start of the 2021 college football season, Georgia has only 3 losses in total, all 3 against Alabama. Should UGA be the underdog even on the road in Austin?
Yes, I do think they should be here, given the fact that, listen, this number seems a little bit high, but I have both of these teams on equal footing on offense. But this year, ironically enough, I've got the Texas defense rated better than what I've got for Georgia here. This is not a Georgia defense of the years past, even though the market continues to think that they are. They're not. Plus, Texas hasn't really faced a great offensive team yet. They are going to be tested by Georgia here in this game here. But they have proved themselves offensively, have they not? Great defensive teams here. They gained over 400 yards a game. We've seen them do that against really good teams like Clemson, in fact, Alabama. I think offensively, Texas is going to score their points. I do think the Texas defense is going to be able to get a few more stops here than what the Georgia defense is. Plus, the Bulldogs have gone, I believe, this is a spot you usually want to back Kirby Smart. This is getting points. Yeah. This is where he lives. But like we talked about Tomlin at home, getting points has been money over the years. Same thing with Kirby. I just don't know that this is the year for either of those two teams that we want to back them just because they're dogs.
You know, everything in me, Joe, wants to say Georgia should not be an underdog. I still consider Georgia a national title favorite. Yep. I still think UGA is one of the 3 best teams in the country. They've lost 3 games since the middle portion of 2020, 3 of their last 50-plus by this point, and all 3 have been against Alabama. But this Georgia team looks a little bit different. Still a top 20 scoring defense, but allowing 17 points per game. Still a top 30 total defense, but when you use top 20 and top 30, not necessarily the standard in Athens. They're giving up more than 312 yards per game, and they're giving up more than $120 on the ground. They're the 9th worst rushing defense in the SEC. It's not a good recipe for this Georgia team, Joe. They were the 3rd best nationally in 2021 in defending the run. They were the best in the country in 2022. The 2 years they won back-to-back national championships. There's an elite defense at play, but it's not the Bulldogs. It's the Longhorns. Best scoring defense, best total defense in the country. Joe, it actually leans me toward an under at 56.5 because everything will be calling for me to take Georgia as the underdog, getting 4.5 points in this spot. If I think Georgia keeps this game close, maybe even within a single score, they're going to have to slow down Texas. The Longhorns team total 30.5. Now let's go to the rest of a significant Saturday in the SEC. It's the 3rd Saturday in October. It's Rocky Top, Tennessee. It's the Volunteers hosting Alabama, a top 15 tilt. Neither team, Joe, after getting beat 2 weekends ago, looked all that great in their bounce-back spot last Saturday. How does this game play out? Line working in favor of the Tide, now north of a field goal.
Listen, I like Tennessee's defense. I think they've actually been better than Alabama's defense on the year here.
No doubt.
There were some questions, coming in as were they a paper tiger? The answer is no. The problem with Tennessee right now is their offense and their young quarterback who seems to have regressed here a little bit against better defensive teams in the SEC. When you don't score a point in the first half of 2 straight games against SEC opponents, that's a problem. Alabama's offense will be the best offense they have seen. Alabama's offense is on a totally different level here. I do think Alabama is the rightful favorite here. I don't think Josh Heupel trusts his young quarterback. I think that's going to be the difference in this game.
The Vols under in all 3 SEC games. Why? Because that defense is very, very good. Top 5 in both scoring and total defense. But the offense does not look the same that it did in its opening 3 games. 191 points in the first 3 games, Joe. 25 points or less in their last 3 in the SEC. But is Alabama's defense good enough to make Tennessee earn it? That's the question for Rocky Top. Plenty more around Saturday. Next here on TEL.
Want to know who to draft and who to avoid in fantasy football? Or want to know who to place NFL season future bets on? Get an insider edge from the former NFL team doctors at Sports Injury Central. The 2024 NFL preseason injury guide is the only in-depth injury report analyzing all 32 teams and over 150 players. So go to sixscore.com to get the most accurate NFL preseason injury report. That's sixscore.com.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
A lot of college football to break down, and Joe, a significant Saturday in the SEC. Top 5 tilt in Austin. Number 1, Texas. Number 5, Georgia. Top 15 tilt in Tennessee. It's the Vols in the 3rd Saturday of October on Rocky Top against Alabama. And LSU now ranked in the top 10 after handling business at home at night against Ole Miss. So, Joe, make this make sense to me. At a point yesterday, the Bayou Bengals just a 1.5 favorite, a virtual pick'em against Arkansas. Now back to 2.5 in favor of the Tigers. But we know the Hogs are a great underdog team. How do you see Saturday in Fayetteville playing out tomorrow night?
You got to be, first of all, LSU was lucky to beat Ole Miss at home in that spot in overtime. Their great quarterback, Nussmeier, 22 of 51. So please save me about how this LSU offense is just so impeccable here. Not to mention, I still think their defense is trash here. And anytime we've gotten Pittman at home in under the lights, man, for a getting points, come on. Arkansas has always been and always will be, as far as I'm concerned. We just saw it a couple of weeks ago. You want to give me points for Arkansas at home with that offense against the defense that can't stop anybody? Yeah, I'll take Arkansas on the points. LSU lucky to come away with that miss against Ole Miss.
It is interesting, though, Joe, because even if this was above a field goal, I'd say, yeah, Arkansas. But we're less than that. We're basically reaching a point of a pick'em. Arkansas, though, as an underdog. The Razorbacks this year, 4-0 against the spread, 2 outright victories. With Sam Pittman as the head coach of the Hogs since 2020, 21-9 against the number of the best of any Power 4 conference program in the country. There is a reason they say in whoa, pig suey when they see that plus in front of their price on the money line. A big one for LSU. Taylon Green, the quarterback for Arkansas, the Boise State transfer, expected to be back. He has thrown for at least 266 yards in all 3 games against a ranked opponent this year for Arkansas. 242.5 is his prop. LSU, Joe, still some issues defensively. Now, we've got a Game of the Year potential in Game of the Year 3 in Austin on Saturday night. We've got great games in the SEC, but my favorite game of the week, our producer extraordinaire, Joe Frizo, knows me well. That's Bloomington. Noon Eastern time tomorrow. 6-0 Indiana. 5-1 Nebraska. A touchdown spread in favor of the Hoosiers virtually, now dipping below that number of 7 at 6.5. Total working its way down from a number that was north of 50 just a few days ago. Joe, Indiana, Nebraska. How do you break it down?
Yeah, very simple. Indiana by 1 million. Signetti is a hoot, guys. I mean, listen, Signetti, you gotta love a dude that absolutely goes to the microphone and says, when he asked what he envisioned when he took the job in Indiana, he said, it's pretty simple. I win. Google me. Maybe one of the best lines ever. Only the market didn't Google him because they set their win total at 5.5. And guess what? They're 6-0. Not only straight up, but against the number. He was 33-5 straight up before taking the job at Indiana. He was a 70% ATS head coach before he took this job at Indiana, and nothing he has shown here with the players he's brought over and the players returning leads me to believe Nebraska, with a young but talented quarterback who's got to go. This is his second true road start in that place. Both teams coming off a bye. The kid didn't look great against Purdue on the road, his first road game. I don't think he's going to look here. I think the difference is offensively, Indiana is heads and tails above Nebraska's offense. I rate the defenses about the same. I think there's a huge edge for Indiana in this game.
We've got 2 really great defenses. It's why I lean under 50.5 and working its way down. But Indiana, second best scoring offense in the country. Curtis Rourke and the Hoosiers have been putting up points. Quickly, Joe, to ACC territory. Louisville, a slight home underdog against unbeaten Miami. Off to a 6-0 start, but only a 4.5-point spread. Does Miami remain perfect on Saturday?
Yeah, well, they may, but they in all likelihood ain't covering it. It's going to be some sort of weird. This is the crystal ball game. This is where Miami ruins its entire season with a total clunker thanks to their coach.
Mario Cristobal coming back to bite his own team. You do not say. We got to show you the rest of Saturday and this splendid Friday before our pick 6 for week 7 up next.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I mean, week 8 in college football is just magnificent. Everything that we have shared for Saturday and even more. And don't wait till Saturday. A great Friday night slate tonight. We've got 2 ranked teams inside the top 15 in action. Number 2, Oregon heads to West Lafayette against an unranked Purdue team. The Ducks, a 4-touchdown favorite, but the Spoilermakers are the Spoilermakers for a reason. 17 wins as an unranked foe against a top 5 team in the AP poll since 1936. Most in college football, nobody more than 11. They've got 9 wins against a team ranked 1 or 2 since 1950. Most in college football. Could it potentially happen tonight?
No, they're not going to. No, absolutely not. But Ryan Brown was a great upgrade at quarterback over Hudson Carr. I'll tell you that right now. He throws the ball just as well, but he added 129 yards on 16 runs in that overtime win last week, or loss rather, to Illinois. The problem with this is the Boilermakers defense. Oregon can name their score in this game. But it's a huge letdown spot from that win over Ohio State. And how many starters are going to be left in the game by the time the fourth quarter comes around? The answer is next to none. So the back door to me is going to be wide open in this game in the second half. I would only look at taking the 30 points in this one if I was playing it at all.
So Oregon won last week against Ohio State, its first cover in Big Ten play, and they won outright as an underdog. The Boilermakers, as an underdog, they covered for the first time against an FBS foe last week, coming back from being down 27-3 against Illinois early in that third quarter. 5-9 ATS as a dog with Brian Walters, became the head coach in West Lafayette at the beginning of last season. A lot of that Spoilermaker magic has followed Jeff Brom to Louisville. He was 22-13 against the spread in his 6 seasons as the man at Ross Aid. Late night in Provo, BYU laying nearly double digits. Garrett Rangel gets the start for Oklahoma State, no longer Alan Bowman. Top 25 tilt, Michigan, Illinois. The Illini, a home underdog. Iowa State, perfect 6-0 for the first time since 1938. Notre Dame and Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Kansas State heads to Morgantown to take on West Virginia. K-State has been abysmal on the road since the start of last year. No cover so far this year, including last week in Boulder. 1-6-1 as a road team against the number since the start of 2023. Joe, elsewhere on that weekend watch list, what do you like?
Yeah, I'm a big BYU fan in this game here tonight, and it pains me to say that, but Oklahoma State is dying a slow death. There, when you're sending your backup quarterback Rangel in over your 80-year-old quarterback Bowman, we have a problem, Houston. That's a real BYU defense, and that is a team I want to back in Provo tonight there. I think it's a double-digit win easily for them. And how in the world are we getting points in Illinois, Michigan? How is that happening, Ben? How is an over ever happening in that game?
I actually think the two offenses kind of do good things against two defenses that aren't as good as we might expect the numbers to suggest. Michigan bad against the pass. Welcome Luke Altmaier, Zachary Franklin, and Pat Bryant. Illinois, not great defending the run. Will we see Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings have a big day? But, Joe, I do agree on paper it should be a Big Ten battle. All right. Let's get to Week 7 and the NFL Sunday slate and our pick 6 here on the early line. A reminder, our favorite touchdown scorer, our favorite money line underdog, the best under of the weekend, an alt line with a sprinkle of plus money, or perhaps in Joe's case, a large plus money sprinkle, our favorite yardage prop of the week, and we combine forces for a 2-leg 6-point teaser that finally hit for us 6 weeks into the NFL campaign a Sunday ago. Joe, please begin. Your favorite touchdown score of the weekend is who and in what game?
Yeah, well, we're still waiting for some of the props to post here for this game, but I am a big believer that points are coming in this Raiders game. I think that defense is going to be in for a very, very long afternoon against a rested and now healthy Rams team. That, in all likelihood, would include one Cooper Kupp back in action here. Yeah. It looks like he is trending to play. And if he does, yes, keep in mind, this is a Rams team that has lost one-score games to the Packers, to the Lions, and to the Bears. And they have been hurt the entire way through, getting healthy on defense and the offensive line. I think Cooper Kupp doesn't play without finding the end zone here. I'm going with Cooper Kupp. Welcome back.
And it is a total of 43.5 in that game. Joe, on FanDuel, still no touchdown score props out just yet. I'd also look at Kyren Williams, who has been great for LA this season. Like you said, a lot of matchup advantages for the Rams, utilizing an early bye week, and they needed it to get healthy. My favorite touchdown score of the weekend, welcome back, Joe Mixon. On the road in Green Bay, great game against the Packers on deck. 2.5-point spread in favor of the Pack. Total 47.5. 3 total touchdowns, Joe, for Joe Mixon in his 2 fully healthy games, including, as we saw last week, finding Pater twice, both on the ground and through the air, as Houston had him return. That's a big thing for the Texans, I think, in this spot. Give me Joe Mixon at an even plus 100 number to find Pater. And quickly just want to mention this. Miami and Indianapolis, TD score props weren't out as of last night when we were putting this all together. Almost on principle, Joe, kind of like you hit big with Mark Andrews last week at plus 320 to score for the first time this year. I know Miami's offense has been putrid without Tua Tagovailoa, but Tyreek Hill at plus 175 in Indy after a bye to figure things out might just be worth it because you don't see those numbers on Tyreek throughout a regular season.
Yeah, no, when you told me that was the number, I was like, you got to be kidding me here. Coming off the bye, Huntley's now had how much time in the to figure some things out here? I got no problem with that. I think that's just that's an automatic from this point forward because the market seems to have forgotten how ridiculously electric he is.
Yeah, and you got to think they'd feed him the ball in whatever way. I'm not saying he's got to break down the field and Tyler Huntley's got to hit him on a 70-yard pass. Screen pass, hand him the ball off, end around, whatever it is, to find Pater. Mike McDaniel needs to show he's got some offensive ingenuity, even with the cards stacked against him. Moneyline underdog, Joe. Who's pulling the upset on Sunday?
Oh, I believe Seattle is pulling the upset on Sunday against Atlanta. This market has completely lost their mind with this Atlanta team. And I do think, of course, getting a little healthier on defense, which is exactly what the Seahawks will be here this week. They get Byron Murphy back on the defensive front there. Woolley will be back in the secondary. So all of the pieces that have been out for Seattle defensively will be back. And that's good news, because I do believe that the way to beat this Atlanta team with Kirk Cousins is by putting pressure on him. And pressure, I think they will get. Conversely, Atlanta cannot get to quarterbacks. Geno Smith will have all day in the pocket to hit DK Metcalf all over the place, along with Jackson Smith and Jibba, in a game that they want to have. McDonald's even said it. This is going to be a much bigger game to Seattle than it is to Atlanta. I think Atlanta takes a step back. I think Seattle wins outright on the road.
50.5 the total for that game as well. Seattle, such a strong start, 3-0, but because of competition, some poked holes in the resume. They've at least looked correct in the last 3 weeks. The Hawks on a 3-game skid. No covers in any of the three, twice as an underdog. Can they turn it around in the A on Sunday? My money line underdog. The rest of our Week 7 Pick 6 is up next.
That kid on the two-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallized Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Our Sunday slate preview, our Week 7 Pick 6, our best bets continue here on this Football Friday on the early line. My money line underdog for Sunday, not all that staunch of an underdog. It's Detroit on the road in Minneapolis. I think the Lions are the best team in the NFC North. Heck, they might be the best team at current moment in all of the conference. I think they show that. Minnesota is a good team. Yes, there will be some regression after a perfect 5-0 start. Still expect the Vikes to factor in to the playoff race, but this feels to be the spot where Minnesota, even after a bye, suffered its first defeat of the year. Detroit has not been booked as an underdog yet this season. and they were not often an underdog as they turned things around in a historic season in 2023. But last year, Joe, 3-1 against the spread. All they need to do is win outright this week with a plus 110 price on the money line. Give me Detroit to start 5-1. Hand the Vikings their first loss, fall to 5-1. The Lions would be in first in a highly competitive NFC North.
Yeah, listen, defensively, it's going to be rough for Detroit. But at the same time, you know what happens when you lose your star player on that side of the ball. Usually that first game afterwards, everyone wants to get up and perform for that. And he was the unmitigated leader of that team. So I think you're going to get a much better Detroit defensive effort than you would think. And ultimately, I think with you, Ben, Minnesota, that might be the paper of all paper tigers this season in the NFL.
Yeah, it's a great start. How long does Sam Darnold keep it going? We shall see.
Yep.
Defensively, though, Detroit is going to have to fill a huge void without Aiden Hutchinson. Could plague them later in the year. Don't think it's the differentiating factor for Sunday. Favorite under of the weekend. What are we sweating out on Sunday, Joe Ranieri?
Well, we talked about it earlier in the show, and I just have absolutely no idea how the Giants are going to score any points in this game here. It is quite obvious they've got injuries, including to the one offensive lineman they could rely on in Andrew Thomas. He is now gone. They have backups across the board on the offensive line, backing up Danny Dimes. This is not a good situation. Against a terrible Cincinnati defense that couldn't stop a nosebleed. They only managed 7 points in that game here. Vic Fangio and this Eagles offense starting to figure it out. They're going to take advantage of the injuries on the offensive line. I can't count on the Giants to give me enough to even consider the over. And let's face it, did you see this offense of Philadelphia run against the Browns? I would expect a lot of Saquon Barkley, a lot of running. The only thing they care about is winning the game, and I don't think this thing is sniffing 43 points.
In their two domestic wins this year, because, of course, they started the season, that being Philadelphia, out in Sao Paulo, they have played heavily under. They beat the Saints 15-12, 27 combined points, well under 49.5. Last week, 8.5-point favorite against the putrid Browns. Come nowhere close to covering. They win 20-16, under 42. The defense under Vic Fangio is better. The Giants' offense, a struggle. We'll see if Malik Neighbors is back, if he can pass concussion protocol to play on Sunday. Joe, I expect Philadelphia to win. It's a very intriguing spot this upcoming Sunday in MetLife. Again, an Eagles team that has a winning record, that is 3-2, but they're not looking or feeling all that good right now. And as you mentioned, Jordan Mailata out for the Eagles. The Giants, 26 sacks, the most in the NFL following 6 weeks. Let's go to my favorite under. It's Titans team total under 15.5. 40.5 is the total for a game that features 8.5 points in favor of Buffalo in Western New York on Sunday. I don't think it's going to be a picture-perfect, pretty game, and I certainly do not trust Will Levis. 95 yards, a touchdown, and a pick last week at home for Tennessee. A 1-4 football team this year that has scored 17 points or less in all 4 losses. Buffalo, in their last 3 wins, has held the opposition to 20 points or less. I think it's an easy win for Buffalo. I'm not sure Tennessee gets more than 2 touchdowns on the board. I'll go Titans under 15.5 for my favorite under. All right, alt line, some juicy plus money plays, Joe. What gets your attention?
Yeah, so I'm going to go to a game, Ben, that we talked about here that seems to, well, we're expecting a few points, aren't we, in this Detroit and Minnesota game? So how about we go with David Montgomery, rather, to get 2 or more touchdowns in the game. What are we thinking about that with the opportunity there? I think not only in the red zone, but an opportunity to be able to out-physical the Vikings, because that is who the Detroit Lions are. I would expect a couple of opportunities not to get cute in the red zone, to hand the ball off and impose their will. I think he's got a good shot at getting more than 2 touchdowns in this game.
When you see that number at plus 460, it is worth a sprinkle. 50.5. One of our 3 games with a total of 50 plus on Sunday. And David Montgomery scored twice last weekend. He has scored in every game. He's got 6 rushing scores for Detroit, tied for the second most, at least on the ground around the NFL. My alt line, Jets, team total over 23.5 in the Steel City on Sunday. Listen, I recognize that Pittsburgh is the second best scoring defense in the NFL, limiting opponents to just 14.3 points per game. It's not even like, Joe, I think I found an edge in the handicap. You see, Pittsburgh's not great at this, and here's why Aaron Rodgers can't take advantage, yada, yada, yada. No, it's simple. It is now or never. You get Devontae Adams, who is not going to fix your offensive line, who's not going to fix your kicking game, who's not going to make your up-front defense better at defending the run. It better be because you start scoring 35-plus per game. That's how it has to happen now for the Jets if they are going to snap a 13-year playoff drought and carve their way out of a 2-4 hole to start this year. It needs to start on Sunday night, and it needs to be a prolific points production night over 23.5 Jets team total, Joe, at plus 190. Because if it does not hit with a small sprinkle, we get to laugh at Aaron Rodgers and condemn his play on Monday morning. More around the Pick Six comes your way next.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line for just a few more minutes on this Football Friday to give you our final picks for the Sunday slate to round out the Week 7 Pick 6. All right, yardage prop time. A player that we like to go off on Sunday. Joe Ranieri, for you, who is that guy?
I'm going to stick. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Highest scoring game of the weekend is going to be this Minnesota and Detroit game, and I am going with Justin Jefferson up and over 92.5 yards receiving. He averages 10 targets a game most of the time when he plays this Detroit team. He's also got 124 or more receiving yards in 6 of his last 7 games against them. I would expect with the 2 edge rushers of the Lions being down, Ben, that Sam Darnold and company are going to take a few more shots down the field and will have a little more time to do so. So I think it's a big game time for Jefferson. I think he gets at least 100. I'm expecting a big day from him.
81 plus for J-Jet in the last 4 games with Sam Darnold, despite Joe not having more than 6 grabs in any of those 4. Explosive this year. He has loved Sammy D in what Darnold has been able to do for this Kevin O'Connell offense. And to your point, even with Aiden Hutchinson, Detroit has not been great defending the pass the last 2 years. 6th worst so far this year. 6th worst the entirety of the regular season a year ago. My favorite yardage prop, Jaden Daniels, over 241.5 passing yards against Carolina. 8.5-point spread in favor of the Commanders. Highest total of the weekend at 51.5. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I'm not sure I want to lay 8.5 with Washington in this spot, but I do think Jaden Daniels takes advantage of one of the worst defenses in the NFL, that being Carolina. They have not been bad or nearly as bad in every other angle against the pass as they have been on that defensive side of the football. Only one passer, Joe, has thrown for more than 250 this year. His name, Caleb Williams, a couple of weeks ago. I think Jaden Daniels tries to do the same as the rookie signal caller he is battling with for the Offensive Rookie of the Year at this moment. Daniels over 241.5 against Carolina. 5 of 6 games over for Washington, Joe. All 4 starts that Andy Dalton has made for the Panthers over as well. I do think we see some points on Sunday outside the nation's capital.
Yeah, another one of these games, man, it'd be very hard to look at anything other than an over here. You've got one side, both sides defensively, kind of not known to be stopping teams, and I do think they're going to play from in front. And I would expect that that effort against Baltimore was impressive. I expect them to continue to build off of that. And yes, prior to that, it seemed like 30, 40 points a game. Not a problem for Washington. I don't see how it's going to be a problem here either.
Yeah, they looked good last week. They did not cover by the hook, but they still were not overmatched, I would say, in any angle by the Ravens. All right. For the first time this season. It took us 6 weeks, but it did happen. We combined forces for a 2-leg, 6-point teaser, and it did hit courtesy of a Broncos backdoor cover of a number up to 9. So let's do it again, Germanary. Start us off with your first leg of this 6-point teaser.
I think it's simple, Ben. I mean, you like this team to win as a moneyline dog. I think there's no reason if I can get Detroit over a touchdown not to include them in teasers. And that's exactly what we're doing. They're getting 1.5 right now. Kind of a no-brainer to get me 7.5 in a game that I, too, like them to win outright. And they are going to be in a few teasers that I have this week.
No doubt. No doubt. Feels like a great teaser spot through 2 crucial numbers. Germanary, you are heavily invested in Lions-Vikings in Minneapolis on Sunday, my friend.
It better not be 3-0, Ben. Otherwise, we're kind of screwed here all day. So yeah, let's hope for some points and for Detroit to win this game outright.
Yes, the last 3 picks in the pick 6, all in that game. I'm going to take the Bills down from 8.5 through a touchdown, through a field goal, lay only 2 and a hook. Listen, I don't think it's a pretty game. I don't think it's a super high scoring game in Orchard Park. I just have no belief in Will Levis as a starting quarterback. It's time to turn to Mason Rudolph. Brian Callahan, if you want to be around for more than 1 year. I'll take the Bills minus 2.5, Joe.
Yeah, no, I kind of I like that. It's the Bills will win the game. It's just a matter of how much, Ben. The idea that they get 3-point win, at least a 3-point win, I'm with you there. I like our chances here this week.
Let's keep it rolling into week 6. I'll see you tomorrow for week 8 of college football. We'll see everybody on the early line on Monday. Have a great weekend.